Welcome to the Deep Dive.
Great to be here.
So today we're diving into The Courage to be Disliked. It's by Ichiro Kashimi and Fumitaka Koga.
Yeah, and it's structured in a really interesting way, isn't it?
It is. It's basically a dialogue unfolds over 5 nights between a philosopher and this kind of cynical young man.
In that format, it really lets them dig deep into some pretty challenging ideas from Adlerian psychology mostly.
Exactly. So our mission today for this deep dive is really to pull out those key Adlerian concepts, especially from the early parts of their conversation.
And see how these ideas might offer you, the listener, maybe a different angle on personal challenges, happiness, that sort of thing.
Right. And the foundation here is Alfred Adler. Maybe not as famous as Freud, but a major figure.
Oh, absolutely. Early 20th century Austrian psychiatrist, founder of Adlerian psychology.
And the book points out this interesting link between his ideas and ancient Greek philosophy.
Yeah, there's a real resonance there. So the setup is this young guy. He goes to see the philosopher.
Yeah. And he's carrying a lot of baggage, you know, feeling inferior about his background, his studies, even his looks. Pretty skeptical.
Definitely skeptical. He's there to challenge the philosopher, really poke holes in his arguments.
Okay, so where do they start? One of the first big, potentially controversial ideas is about trauma.
Right. The philosopher puts it bluntly. Trauma does not exist, at least not in the way we usually think about it.
Whoa, okay. That sounds quite provocative. What does he mean?
He means it doesn't exist in a purely deterministic cause and effect way. Adlerian psychology focuses on teleology, the purpose behind things.
Purpose, not etiology, the cause.
Exactly. Less about what past event caused this and more about what goal does this behavior or feeling serve now.
Can you give an example? The book uses one, right, about a friend.
Yeah, the youth talks about his friend who's become a shut-in, totally isolated.
And the youth's assumption is, well, something bad must have happened. Trauma. That's why he's like this.
That's the etiological view, past cause, present effect, but the philosopher flips it.
Yeah.
He suggests the friend might be creating the feelings of anxiety and fear.
Creating them. Why would anyone do that?
To achieve a goal, the goal in this case being not going out.
So the anxiety serves the purpose of staying inside, avoiding social interaction, maybe potential hurt.
That's the teleological interpretation. The feelings are real, absolutely, but they're being used to justify the goal of withdrawal.
Okay, this is crucial, though. Adler isn't denying that bad things happen, like abuse or neglect, right?
Not at all. He doesn't deny the influence of the past. But the key is we choose the meaning we give those experiences.
So it's the interpretation. The book quotes Adler, something like,
we determine our own lives according to the meaning we give to those past experiences.
so the power isn't in the event itself, but in how we frame it, how we decide what it means for us now.
Precisely. Which leads to another really tough idea.
Let me guess. Unhappiness is something you choose for yourself.
That's the one. It sounds harsh, doesn't it?
It really does. How can that be justified?
Well, the philosopher links it to Socrates. No one desires evil. And evil here means not beneficial.
Okay.
So the implication is if someone...
Chosen. Okay. So if our lifestyle is chosen, and maybe even our unhappiness, what about emotions like anger?
Anger. Another one where Adler takes a different tack. The idea is we often fabricate anger.
Fabricate it, like fake it.
Not necessarily fake in the sense of pretending, but rather using it as a tool. We generate anger to achieve a goal.
What kind of goal?
Usually to make someone submit, to control a situation through intimidation or raising your voice. It feels impulsive, but the philosopher argues there's an underlying objective.
The book has that great anecdote, doesn't it? The mother.
Yes. The mother yelling at her daughter, completely furious. Then the phone rings. She sees it's the daughter's teacher.
And instantly switches.
Yeah.
Polite, composed voice.
Completely different persona. Then she hangs up.
And boom, right back to yelling.
It shows anger isn't always this uncontrollable wave that washes over us. It can be turned on and off. It can be deployed.
So again, it comes back to purpose, to the goal. We're not just puppets of our past or our emotions.
That's the core message. It's the meaning we assign, the goals we set in the present. That's what shapes our reality.
Like the analogy of the well water.
Yeah, the well water is objectively, say, 60 degrees year-round, but whether it feels warm or cold depends on whether you're drinking it in summer or winter.
So a divorce is an objective fact, but whether it feels like a cold tragedy or a warm liberation.
Depends entirely on your subjective interpretation, the meaning you give it.
And this is all leading towards a fundamental belief in.
That people can change.
Yeah.
Adler is fundamentally optimistic about human potential.
Unlike perhaps a strict Freudian view where the past determines the present.
Exactly. The philosopher argues that Freudian etiology can sometimes feel like it denies free will, locking you into patterns dictated by the past. Adler offers a way out.
Okay, so we've talked about individual choice, meaning purpose.
Yeah.
But Adler also puts huge emphasis on relationships, right?
Oh, absolutely massive. He has this statement, all problems are interpersonal relationship problems.
All of them. That sounds incredibly broad. What about, say, feeling inadequate about your own skills? Or just feeling lonely?
Well, the youth in the book pushes back on that too. But the philosopher argues, think about it. If you were literally the only being in the universe,
Yeah.
would loneliness exist? Would feelings of inferiority exist?
I guess not. Loneliness implies the absence of others.
Yeah.
Inferiority implies comparison to others.
Exactly. These feelings, even seemingly internal ones, arise because we exist in a social context. Our awareness of others is fundamental to them.
So inferiority isn't an objective fact about you. It's a subjective feeling in relation to someone else.
Precisely. It's an assumption you make based on comparison within your interpersonal relationships.
Now, is feeling inferior always bad?
Not necessarily. Adler saw the pursuit of superiority striving to be better and feelings of inferiority as normal stimulants for growth. They push us to improve.
But there's a difference between that healthy striving and an inferiority complex.
Yes. An inferiority complex happens when someone uses their feeling of inferiority as an excuse to give up. They stop making realistic efforts and say, well, I can't because I'm not smart enough, good enough, whatever enough.
They get stuck.
Right. They lose the courage to change.
And the book links this strongly to competition, doesn't it?
Yes. When we view our relationships primarily through the lens of competition, problems arise because competition always creates winners and losers.
And if you feel like you're constantly losing.
It breeds feelings of inferiority, resentment, unhappiness. The youth mentions being compared to his older brother constantly.
Yeah, that's a classic example. Feeling like you're always in someone's shadow because you're in this perceived race. Does that ring true for you? Listening. Constantly comparing yourself.
It's a common trap, and it connects to what Adler calls life tasks.
The big three: work, friendship, and love.
Right. All fundamentally interpersonal. They all involve navigating relationships.
And avoiding these tasks, like struggling to hold a job, or make friends, or form intimate relationships.
Adler would suggest it often stems from a lack of courage. Fear of the interpersonal challenges involved, fear of judgment, rejection, failure in that social arena.
Okay, so if all problems are interpersonal and avoiding life tasks comes from a lack of courage in relationships, what's the solution Adler offers?
This brings us to probably one of the most practical and powerful concepts in the book, the separation of tasks.
Separation of tasks. What does that mean exactly?
It means figuring out whose task is this? Is this problem, this decision, this emotion my responsibility or someone else's?
And then acting accordingly.
Yes. Don't interfere in other people's tasks, and don't let them interfere in yours. Draw a clear boundary.
Can you give an example? The book uses one about parents and career choices, I think.
That's a great one. Your parents disapprove of your chosen career path. They're upset, maybe angry or worried.
Okay, whose task is what?
Your task is to choose the path you believe is best for your life. Their task is to manage their own feelings about your choice, their disappointment, their worry.
So you don't take responsibility for their emotional reaction.
Exactly. You acknowledge their feelings, perhaps, but you don't let their disapproval dictate your life choice. Because that choice is your task. Their feeling is their task.
That feels liberating, but also maybe a bit cold.
It can seem that way initially. But think about the alternative, living your life constantly trying to manage other people's emotions and expectations.
Right, and it applies at work too, like with a difficult boss.
Definitely. If your boss is unreasonably angry or demanding, that anger, that unreasonableness, that's their task to manage.
So my task is just to do my job well, not to fix their anger or constantly walk on eggshells.
Your task is to fulfill your responsibilities professionally. How they react, assuming you're doing your part, is their issue, their task. You don't have to be subservient to their moods.
The book uses that metaphor of Alexander the Great and the Gordian knot.
Yeah, instead of trying to untangle the hopelessly complex knot based on everyone else's rules, he just cut it.
Change the perspective, didn't get bogged down in what wasn't his essential
Yes.
tasks.
Exactly. Separation of tasks can cut through a lot of interpersonal knots by clarifying responsibility.
But it's not about being uncaring or isolated, is it?
Not at all. The goal isn't indifference. It's about building healthier relationships based on respect for boundaries. It requires a kind of moderate distance.
Neither too enmeshed nor too detached.
Right. You're available to help if asked and if it's appropriate, but you don't barge into their tasks, and you don't carry their burdens for them.
This really strikes at the need for approval, doesn't it? The desire for recognition.
Hugely. So much of our behavior is driven by seeking approval, living up to others' expectations.
And the philosopher says something quite stark about that.
You are not living to satisfy other people's expectations.
And then the flip side.
And neither are they living to satisfy yours. It cuts both ways.
That's a big shift in perspective. How much energy do we waste trying to win approval or control how others see us?
A lot. And the youth worries, doesn't this sound really self-centered?
Yeah, that's the immediate reaction, isn't it?
Yeah. But the philosopher clarifies. It's not about disregarding others. It's about understanding responsibility. Who owns what part of the interaction?
And living just to meet expectations. It's like you're not living your own life.
It's a form of lying to yourself, living a life chosen by others. Separation of tasks is presented as the gateway to freedom and authentic relationships.
Okay, so as we wrap up this first look into the courage to be disliked, we've covered some pretty significant ground.
Yeah, these core Adlerian ideas. Denying deterministic trauma, focusing on purpose.
The idea that we choose our lifestyle, even our unhappiness, that anger is often a tool.
The fundamental insight that all problems are interpersonal.
And this really practical tool of separating tasks, understanding whose responsibility is whose.
And the common thread through all of it is this teleological view. The focus on goals, on purpose, and the empowering idea that you have the capacity to choose your present and future.
The past influences, but it doesn't have to dictate. Agency is key.
Absolutely. It puts the power back in your hands.
So maybe a final thought for you, the listener, to mull over. Think about a challenge you're facing right now, maybe a difficult relationship or situation.
And ask yourself really honestly, if I apply the separation of tasks principle here, whose task is this, really? What part is mine to handle and what part belongs to someone else?
How might focusing only on your task and letting go of the rest change how you feel or what you do next? Could it free you up somehow?
It's a powerful question. And these ideas we've discussed are really just the beginning, from the first couple of nights in the book's dialogue.
Definitely encourages further reading if this resonates. There's a lot more depth to explore in Adler's psychology as presented in The Courage to be Disliked.
For sure. Reflect on these concepts. See if they shift anything for you.